Okay, good evening everyone. How are you? Thank you for having me in Brazil. It's my first time. It's a very warm country, and I must say I've been here for 2 days now, and I'm really enjoying it. So thank you for having me here today. My name is Hasmita, and I'm with Oticon. So I've been living in Denmark for the last almost 5 years. I'm originally from a very warm country like yourself, from South Africa. So now I live in a very cold country, and I really don't know why I left the sun. I'm going to be with you for the next hour, and trust me, it's going to be an exciting hour for you. As I've just witnessed, I can see that you're a very fun group. So let's get excited, and I hope you have a really interesting time for the next hour. For the people we are streaming this event live, so hello to all those people at home. Welcome to the event live. So let's start. I have a few gadgets all over me. I have like 2 mics, and I only have 2 hands, and a pointer. So let's see how this works. And my slides are in Portuguese, so if I don't know what it means, you're gonna have to help me translate. Okay, let's take a step back and think about why are we in this industry? You as a hearing care professional, as well as us at Oticon. And we really believe in people first. So I'm going to take a step back, and what do we mean by it? We know people with hearing loss actually try and isolate themselves from their life. They stop going out, they stop meeting with their friends, and they just want to spend time alone. So how can we help you to help these people? We want them to communicate freely, interact naturally, as well as participate actively. And take a moment to think about when that patient or client is sitting with you in your office every day. How do you help them do this? And you do. This is our goal. This is what we believe is people first. And I hope that you also believe in this goal to help these clients live a much enriched life, and that they communicate back into a very active lifestyle, whether it is meeting friends once a week or just talking on the phone twice a day. It might be very small things to these people, but it's important for them to live an active and holistic life. When we talk about this goal, we say that we want to give people the energy to live their life. And there's 3 things that are pinned on this. We know that every person is an individual. So 2 people who have the same hearing loss, same audiogram, actually prefer to hear sounds differently. So every individual that you meet wants to have the hearing instruments programmed differently, wants to listen to sound differently. So how can we individualize a hearing solution? So that's our one goal. The second one is performing in difficult hearing situations. Many of you hear all the time that clients come in to your office and tell you, I really want to hear background noise. When I go out with friends, or if I'm in a restaurant, I cannot hear because there's so much noise. So we want to help them perform all day in these difficult situations. So our goal is really to make listening as easy as possible, so that people can preserve the energy they need to live the life they wish to live. If we think about a day, maybe this represents a day in your life. If you look at the bottom, it's just the hours in the day, and if you look at the y-axis, it's just how much energy do you actually spend. It could be waking up in the morning, it could be going to work, it could be in meetings, it could be watching TV at night. We all use different mental energies throughout the day, because we're in different situations that require different levels of mental energy. So if we look at this next graph, think about the light blue. For those of us in the room who have normal hearing, we tend to have a lot more mental energy. Whereas if we look at the dark blue graph, we can see that people with hearing impairment or hearing loss will deplete their energy or lose their energy much quicker or earlier in the day, because they use a lot more effort to concentrate on the speech or sounds around them to understand. So their mental capacity is being used quite quicker than you and I with normal hearing. So again, think about those situations you and I in. Think about what would happen to you if halfway through the day you had not much energy left. Think about how you would feel. So try and think about how it is for those clients that you see that have hearing loss and haven't done anything about it. Or maybe not have the right solution for themselves. How much more energy are they expending trying to listen? So therefore, these are the three things we would like to concentrate on. Make sure that the person with hearing loss will have the mental energy to participate in those demanding situations with more energy to have, so that they don't isolate themselves, so they're still active in their life, so that they can participate and that they can continue and have more energy to be engaged socially. So these are the three goals that we'd like to achieve. And that brings me into what is brain hearing. When Beatrice said the word brain hearing, yeah, we can't really translate the word. But think about it. Brain hearing. It might sound a little odd, but in the next 20 minutes, trust me, it's going to make a lot more sense to you. So we say sound is one thing. Yeah, it's great. We can hear a doorbell, or we can hear the phone ringing. Sound is one thing, but it's really about understanding the sound. And what does that mean for us? In the next minute, I'm going to play you a video, and it's going to explain the overall philosophy of what we mean by brain hearing. So sit back and enjoy.
Since the very beginning of hearing care, our industry has focused on the ear. Developing technologies to amplify sounds and compress their frequencies to those which the damaged ear can hear. We call this ear hearing. And in theory, makes a whole lot of sense. Yet in reality, requires too much effort. Tiredness, withdrawal from social participation, all because the brain is overloaded. The ear hearing approach simply makes it too hard for the brain to make sense of the sounds it receives from the ears. We want to make it easy for the brain to make sense. To do that, we think brain first. The brain constantly uses both ears to orient itself and know what's happening in the environment. It separates relevant sounds from competing noises and can choose where to focus. And it depends on its ability to recognize a sound in order to make sense of it.
Hey, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Orient, separate, focus, recognize. This is the process the brain performs in order to make sense of sound. Because the brain performs these functions simultaneously, we have to support them all continuously. This is no small feat, but it's possible. To help the brain orient, separate, focus, and recognize sounds, brain hearing technology comprises 4 audiological features: spatial sound, speech guard, free focus, and eumatic, all combined to enable both ears to work together, preserve important details of sounds, and match an individual's own unique experience of listening. The result? Well, with ear hearing, average hearing instrument user satisfaction is 79%. But user satisfaction for Oticon Alta with BrainHearing technology rises to 96%. That's some difference. And all because we think brain first. This is BrainHearing, a whole new beginning for hearing care, and a more empowered future for everyone with hearing loss.
Okay, let's recap a little bit. Currently in our industry, we've been talking about ear hearing, and that's focusing only on making the sound audible to the ear. And think about it, when someone has hearing loss, we're talking about the damaged ear. The best way this is done is by fast compression. But by using fast compression, all sounds can be compressed, or has to be compressed, into that narrow channel so that the client can hear it. But there are drawbacks to just thinking about the damaged ear, because we know that the sound has to go through the ear, but it's the brain that processes the sound. It's the brain that matches where the sound that's coming in, that it recognizes it in its long-term memory to recognize, oh, that was a doorbell. Oh, that's the phone ringing. I need to do something about it. But if someone hears the sound and doesn't know what it is, the brain has to work much longer because there's no match that it can make in the long-term memory. But what we believe is what we do with our technologies is we focus on the entire pathway. We know that when hearing loss is present, damage does not stop only at the inner hair cell level. We know that the auditory nerve and the pathway also has some damage. So the transmission between the hair cells to the auditory nerve up to the brain is also affected with hearing loss. We might only see it on an audiogram, but we do know that there's a damage along the pathway. So when we think about brain hearing, and in order to make sense of sound, we're not only focusing on just making sounds louder. We're focusing on how can we keep the sound as clean and clear as possible so that when it is transmitted into a damaged ear, how can the brain make sense of it so that we can use the processing as close to the brain as possible? How can we ensure that the signal going in along the pathway does not have a lot of distortion, that it's clean, clear, and how can we ensure that the amplified signal focuses more than just audibility? So let's take a step back and recap from the video. There's 4 things that you and I, or our brains, do automatically. We recognize the sound, we orient where is the sound coming from around us, we can separate the sound, and then focus on the speaker that we want to focus on. Our brains do this all the time. When someone's wearing hearing instruments or hearing aids, we now have to rely on this machine on both sides of the ears to get the sound, communicate with each other, and then send one decision up along the pathway so that the brain knows what to do. If the technology that you have on both ears cannot do this as seamless as possible, or cannot do this as quick, efficient, and keep the signal as natural as possible, it will affect the client wearing the instruments. So we know that all 4 of these things happen all the time simultaneously. We want to keep the natural sound level differences at both ears. We want to preserve the important details of sound. We want to prioritize speech over background noise. I'm sure you can all agree to that. we also want to maintain as much as the surrounding environment as possible, so that the person doesn't feel cut out from what's going on around them. We want to only let the technology kick in when it is helpful for the client. And we want to optimize that all the technologies can work together. We couldn't go for sushi this afternoon because Isabella's not a fan. Where are you? Sorry. Okay, so most people like sushi in the room, and a lot of people like pizza as well. What is that? That is a personal preference you have. Some people might not like sushi, like I think Isabella is, because it's raw fish. She just doesn't like the weird texture. I don't know. I love sushi. So I was not so happy at lunch, but it's okay. Okay, so it's something you prefer. You either like it or you don't. Let's talk about music. Who likes rock music? Okay. Classical? Okay. What's Brazilian music? I don't know. What type of music would you classify that as? Okay, hopefully everyone. No? Not everyone? Okay. Why? Why do we have these preferences? Why do we like one over the other? Who knows? But if I didn't ask you, I wouldn't know. I might have just chosen that, okay, we'll just eat sushi tonight for the dinner. But not everyone here might have been as happy as I would be. Oh, Isabella's in the room now, so I was just telling everyone you don't like sushi. Yeah, so it really comes down to preference. And for a long time, when we get to the Umatic feature, we really don't know a lot about our clients, about what is it that they actually would like to hear, what is it that they would like, how would they like their instruments or their technologies to kick in. Do they want it faster or slower? Do they like sounds that are more rounded? What is round? To you and I, we use these words all the time. Round. Is it tinny? Is it echoing? The clients really don't have the same words you and I use. So keep that in mind. So I've covered most of this. Remember, when we talk about spatial sound, we also talk about true binaural processing. Now, some hearing aids or some manufacturers only do the coordination. And coordination is only changing the volume in the program of both ears. But processing is much more than that. We're talking about the instruments or the technologies in both ears, deciding what choice they have to make. We also want to process both the compression strategies, the same on both ears. So it's much more intelligent and it's much more in real time. It has to happen within split seconds to make a difference. Because otherwise you're going to have this delayed effect, which maybe our translation is right now. So I can see some of you have taken out the translation. So think about that. Imagine having hearing aids and catching the joke 2 minutes later. Well, okay, not 2 minutes, but 30 seconds later. So you're laughing 30 seconds later than everyone else. So put yourself in these people's shoes, and when you think about technologies, about how smart the technology has to be, and in real time, in split seconds. With SpeechGuard, we want to preserve the speech details because it's the speech that helps us communicate with people, not the background noise. With free focus, we really believe that people still want to know what's going on around them. They don't want to feel cut out when they're listening to someone that's speaking to them. So we want to achieve better speech understanding without them losing important information going on around them. An example of this could be if a patient is in the playground, and has their grandchildren playing in the playground while they still want to talk to someone on the bench. Depending on who they want to speak to, they won't want to feel like they're cut out from the environment they're in. They still want to feel like they're in that situation. So they don't want a hearing aid that's going to sound unnatural to them. Pneumatic? I think I've made my point about this, that two people with the same hearing loss might not want the same settings in their hearing instruments. What does one person prefer over the other? And how can we tap into this? So we really have to ensure that all four features can work together. Of course, we have many other features in our hearing instruments, but how can these four work together to ensure that the brain's getting the cleanest signal possible? Remember, we also need the two instruments on both ears to communicate seamlessly, so that the person who's wearing it doesn't feel a little off balance with what sound's coming on in both ears. And we can only do this with our new chip in the instrument, which is called the Inium wireless chip. So it is a quad-core signal processing platform, and it facilitates this more stable, and it also is quite power efficient. So we're not reducing any of our battery life with all these technologies enabled, which is quite impressive. In the video that you just saw, you saw a little bit of the statistics of satisfaction. Now, satisfaction is about how happy is someone using the hearing instruments. How many of you know the Kochkin market track studies? Have you heard of Kochkin? Yeah, I have a few nods. Okay, so Sergei Kochkin was this guy, I think he's a PhD in the US, and he's done these studies with patients over many years. So every year he brings out a market track study, and he'll either look at satisfaction, or are people wearing the instruments, is it in the drawer, how happy are they with it, are they buying low-end instruments, are they buying high-end instruments. So his database is quite impressive. There's about thousands of patients that he has in this database. And what he did was, he asked people, a range of hearing aid manufacturers, so not only Oticon, but he averaged, or he asked people how satisfied they are with their hearing instruments. And on average, he had 79%, which I think that's pretty decent. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah? Yeah. 79% I think is pretty high. Yep. So what did we do? We replicated his study with both existing and new users. So the way he did the study, we did the same thing with our instruments. We used, of course, hearing instruments that had the technologies we just spoke about. And we did the same thing. And we asked them, how satisfied are you with your hearing instruments? And it was on a rating scale. So they had a whole lot of questions to answer, and it was a rating scale from 1 to 7. And they had these questions to fill out, and then of course we calculated it or averaged the results the way he did. So 96% is quite impressive. But we went one step further than just taking one point in time. Because everyone could say, oh yes, but that day I was happy with my hearing instruments, and the next day maybe not so much. So what did we do? We followed up with these people after time, and we checked if their satisfaction stayed or dropped. Were they more happy or less happy with their hearing instruments? And let's look at this graph. I'll run you through it quickly. So you don't have to read it, but I'll show you. At the bottom here, on the x-axis, we have people from very dissatisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, neutral, somewhat satisfied, satisfied, and very satisfied. And if you look at the y-axis, we're looking at how many days later. So in time, so it's 30, 60, 80 days. Let's look at the first line. So look at the initial fitting, which is the black line. We can see people are sort of dissatisfied, but then after time maybe they stayed satisfied. So that's our initial fitting. If you look at the market track study, we can see that they're not so satisfied in the beginning. They become satisfied, but after time, their satisfaction rating kind of starts dropping. I am not sure why. The white line is what we've done. So we followed these people when they were first fitted, 2 weeks after, a month later, I think 3 months later, 6 and 9 months later. And we can see that people remain satisfied. So it's not just a once-off rating. So they were fit with hearing aids, we followed up with them, and remember, we're using the features and we're using the whole personalization approach. We followed up with them again, and we checked. Okay, so these people are not putting it in the drawer, they're using it for at least 8 hours a day, and they actually are very happy with the instruments. We also know that at least, I want to say about 50% of people will buy a hearing instrument if they believe it can be personalized for themselves. Just by knowing that an instrument can be personalized for themselves, they're much more willing to purchase a hearing instrument. And this was a study we did in about 2012. So you might think, okay, brain hearing sounds weird, it might just be a marketing thing, but really, does it work? So we were able to test it in different countries. We did a lot of quantitative studies and qualitative studies. Now that's in Portuguese, but okay. So we had 2 communication studies. We did interviews, we did end user, so client interviews with new and existing people with self-perceived hearing loss. So we also did an online test, and then they could go through the whole. We did the whole information offload, we gave them some images, we gave them the research, and they had to rate, okay, how unique were we? How interesting was this for them? How relevant was it for them? So it was both hearing care professionals and clients. And this is what they had to say. It's informative, it's concise, they really understand, it makes sense to them. And these are just a few of the quotes that we have. And it's really that this is Oticon's audiological approach. It's both attractive to hearing care professionals and clients because it's simple to understand. Many people think it is a game changer because we're in the day and age where people want to age actively. They want to be seen younger than they actually are. They want to be fit. How many people in here actually have tried one of those bands where you monitor your heart rate and your, I don't know, how many steps you took in the day? Anyone? Yeah, a few nods, even if you don't want to raise your hand. Okay. So we are in that generation where it's all about keeping healthy, staying active, keeping our mind active. So it really is a game changer for you and I, as well as for the clients, because it makes sense to them. For many generations, we've been talking about auditory deprivation, and slowly research is showing up. Alzheimer's is just one of them. So it really is about how can we help the client? And hopefully, from just this, you can understand why we believe in keeping the signal as clean and clear as possible. So when we do apply technology or processing to it, we're not trying to distort it. We're trying to get it as close to how the cognitive processing is. So that is the end of the brain hearing section. Now I'm going to introduce you to, okay, so what are the features? What are the hearing aids, because that's what you all came for, right? For the bits and the pieces and all the technology, because we all love it. Oticon Alta, you've heard about this. It is our premium instrument. It is the solution that we believe we can deliver on our entire promise. So what does it mean? We go back to SpeechGuard. The hero feature is SpeechGuard because it's about preserving those fine details in speech and helping the brain separate the voices from the background noise. But what is the benefit for our clients or your patients? Because remember, they don't care what we call these technologies. You and I do. But they really want to know, how can this help me in my everyday life? Why am I spending more? Why do I need it? And our responsibility is, once we know what the client's needs are, we know what their daily life is, we need to explain to them why they need a specific solution, so that they can make an informed decision about what they want to spend. It's really up to them. Once they know, they are informed about the benefits they can get from one solution over the other. So with Alta, it is the SpeechGuard which is the hero. You have much more fitting capabilities, and as you'll see, you'll also have more personalization options. So when we think about U-matic, what is it? How can we personalize sound? How many fitting options do we have? Much more. So we have 5 profiles: exact, balanced, lively, gentle, and what is that one? Stable. Thank you. Oops. I should be able to say this in my sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't tell my boss. Anyway, so yeah, so those are the main 5. But then you also have sub-profiles on right and left on either side, which makes up 15 options. So for you and I who like those trimmers, who like to fiddle in Genie, we have much more fitting capabilities. But for the client, it's really just about playing the sound and then telling you whether A or B sounded better. They don't have the words you and I have, so make them listen to it. It's much easier than trying for them to explain to you what it is that they want. You and I use these words every day. For them, sometimes it's the first time someone's so excited to hear about their hearing loss, because at home, everyone just doesn't even want to talk to them. So give them the opportunity to hear, and then see what happens. With Nera, which is the mid-price product, there's 5 things we can focus on. There's the feedback shield, which you get in all price points the same. You have your binaural processing, spatial sound advanced, free focus advanced, and U-matic advanced. So these are the main 5 areas you can offer to the client. So when we talk about spatial sound, there's 3 components to spatial sound: binaural processing, your extended bandwidth, and the spatial noise management. So we spoke earlier about the interaural level and time differences. You have a larger bandwidth, and the noise management, the spatial noise management, is about helpful in those situations when there's an asymmetrical listening situation. So you have more noise in one ear and you have speech on the other. And that helps in those very specific noisy environments. So this is when the spatial sound is quite helpful. So it all works together in real-time binaural processing. Where do we have it available? You can see in Nera, you still have the binaural processing, so you're still able to have both ears communicate with each other. We have an 8 kilohertz bandwidth, which is still larger compared to some instruments out there. So with the binaural processing, you're able to keep the information about the surroundings according to both the interaural time and level differences. With the 8 kilohertz bandwidth, you still have the audible level difference. Let's talk about the personalization options. With Alta, we have 5. With Nera, you have 3 profiles. However, you're still able to have 7 sub-steps. So there is quite a amount of personalization options available in the mid-level product. So it's quite an all-rounded mid-level price product. And let's just touch quickly on the entry-level product, RIA. Now remember, you have this Inium feedback shield in all 3 products, and they're going to work at the same level. So you're not getting like half the feature in any of the instruments. You're getting the full feature. So let's talk about the Inium feedback shield. Now, some of you might have known some of our previous instruments, and this is really much better than what we've had before. And why is that? So we've got phase inversion, and most noise management systems have that. Then we have something quite new, which is a frequency shift. So it changes the incoming signal by 10 hertz. So if it detects feedback, it corrects the signal at a 10 hertz, or an amount of 10 hertz. And it's inaudible, the shift, to someone who has hearing loss. So they won't notice that the incoming signal has been shifted to prevent feedback. And then the gain management. So of course you're going to decrease a little bit of gain if it detects that there'll be gain feedback present. But I'm going to show you what actually happens. So there's the detector that detects whether there's feedback or not. And I'm doing this in Portuguese. Feedback, great, that's not translated. And then it uses these 3 options simultaneously, or it's active all the time. So you have your inverse, you have your shift, frequency shift, and then you have the gain management system. Then it will check, okay, does it have a tonal? Oh, there's a tonal detector. So no feedback, some feedback, and then is it tonal or non-tonal? And depending on what it is, it will deal with the sound or feedback accordingly. So we say we have no howling. It's measured, it's much more aggressive than we've had before. And we've actually noticed that people appreciate the instruments much more now with a much more aggressive feedback management. If we look at the pneumatic options, you have 1 profile, but 3 sub-steps. Okay? And then overall, the three products. You have Alta, Nera, and RIA, and you see that you have speech guard. What is the second one? Spatial noise management.
Yeah.
Thank you. Spatial sound, binaural processing, binaural synchronization, pneumatic free focus, feedback shield, and the bandwidth. Yeah, right. So basically, no matter where you are in the instrument, all of them have some or the full degree of the brain hearing technologies. You can personalize it quite a lot. And you also get the binaural options. So pneumatic free focus, speech guard, and spatial sound to a large degree contribute to the brain hearing philosophy. However, we do have the other features that also enable that the sound is clear, clean, and we can deliver a sound to the brain that's comfortable, or that's not distorted so that the brain has to use extra processing power or mental energy on the signal that's coming in. So thank you very much, and I hope you had a great session. I think I'm pretty much on time. Are there any questions from the audience? You've been awfully quiet, but I know I can't ask for much when we have translation going on. Everyone still awake? Yes. That was like a joke. I had to wait 30 seconds. Yeah. Any questions? I know it's getting pretty warm in here, so we'll open the doors soon. No? Okay, thank you very much. I'll be here for the evening, so I hope to speak to many of you. I think Beatrice would like to say something. Thank you.